Let's get more on the broad market from Colin Ciesynski, Chief Market Strategist at SIA Wealth Management. Colin, I know we're just waiting for tomorrow, drumming our fingers to see what the Trump tariff announcement will be. But what broad themes are you seeing in the market right now?
Well, the big one is we're seeing obviously a significant decline in equities, and it's interesting how you mentioned that the NASDAQ dropped over 10% in the first quarter, and interestingly, while the TSX was positive, we're seeing a lot of rotation in the markets, and a lot of concern about what could happen to tariffs, what could happen with the economy, and we've seen a number of reports coming out suggesting the economy might be slowing. There's not just the tariffs, but also the U.S. government is dramatically cutting spending, and that could have a slowing effect on the economy in the short term as well.
What will you be looking out for tomorrow, Colin?
Tomorrow, what I'm looking to see is, what are the new tariffs compared to what they've been threatening, to what they've been talking about? Are they the same as what they've been threatening? Are they worse than what they're threatening, or not as bad as what they've been threatening? Because the market's done a fairly reasonable job of pricing in what's happened. Or at the very least, what we've seen is that when Trump talks hawkish on tariffs, the markets have been going down. When he backs off, the markets tend to go back up. So, and we've seen that from day to day. We've even seen that flip several times within the same day, and we may see something like that again tomorrow as well, depending if you get leaks, if you get trial balloons, and then what happens with the actual announcement. Are people selling on rumor and ready to buy on news, or what's happening here? Like, there's a lot of moving pieces, and what ends up finally being announced could be quite significant for market sentiment.
Do you think investors have been too pessimistic? Are you seeing value emerging at this stage, Colin?
What we're seeing right now is a lot of rotation between different markets, and it's quite interesting. It's hard to say at this point whether the markets have gotten cheap. They've been coming down, but prior to this, they actually had a humongous run. And one stock I was looking at, and have been for a while, is Tesla. Okay. If we look at Tesla just as an example, and because with Elon Musk, it's particularly tied to the sentiment towards the Trump administration, the stock was at about $210 at the end of October before the election. It topped out at the end of December at about $480. So Tesla doubled. It's one of the biggest market cap stocks in the States, and it doubled in 2 months. And then it spent the next 2 months coming back down pretty much to where it started, and more recently has started to bounce again. So my point of this is, like, there's been some substantial swings in sentiment over the last number of months.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Elon Musk saying this week that it's personally costing him financially, the decline in Tesla. But I think some people might say, his critics might say, cry me a river. Big cuts in government spending happening in the United States. But of course, their deficit is so vast, it's very hard to make an impact.
Absolutely, and that's going to be an ongoing issue, not just for them, but for a number of governments around the world. Is how do they back away from the high spending of recent years, and what impact does that have? You talked about airlines have been putting out profit warnings. We saw a big one from Nike a couple of last week as well, and that it looks like this is starting to have an impact on consumer spending, and that's something that's become a feature of all this uncertainty. Is what is the bigger impact of all of this? Is it slowing on the economy? Is it raising on inflation? And what's going to happen here? And that's why we've seen a lot of uncertainty and concern, because people just don't really know what's going to happen here, especially with so many conflicts and changes and back and forth and tugs of war.
Let's put up a one-year chart for the NASDAQ 100 as a benchmark of sentiment in the big U.S. tech stocks. Colin, do you think there's any prospect of a turnaround there?
Eventually, the thing is that these are the kind of changes that may take some time to play out. You've had a huge run in the NASDAQ for quite a bit of time. You've had a correction, and of course, with a 10% drop year to date, that does qualify as a correction. And And then the question is, well, now where do you go from here? Is it because these things like the trade wars and tariffs and the impact on growth or on government spending, this could take several months to a year to see the impact fully play out. So it might be a little bit premature to say, okay, well, that's great, we've had a correction, we're done, drive on, and more a case where it's possible you could see things pause for a while just for people to get a sense of where the lay of the land is going forward.
It's amazing, really, the switch. Even just a few weeks ago, people said, well, these internet companies are so hugely profitable. Colin, I know you're very kindly sticking with us for a second block, but give us your take on energy. Are you overweight energy, oil and gas stocks right now?
Energy, we had been impacted, and we had rotated out of some of our energy stocks and back into others. Something that we've seen that's been interesting play out over the number of months has been there's a back and forth in relative strength within the energy sector between the producers and the services, and it's gone back and forth. And so for much of last year and the early part of this year, we had services were outperforming the producers. And now, more recently, we've seen the midstream, the pipelines, the utility part of energy, the pipelines midstream names have been doing very, very well, and some of the producers as well. So we're seeing a shift back and forth within focus within the sector.